Hello, Church of the Ascension. We're back with Song Stories. Today we are talking with Joel Payne, who's based in the UK, about his setting of the Kyrie that you just heard on Sunday and you'll be hearing throughout Lent. So, Joel, would you mind introducing yourself for those who may not know you?
Absolutely. I live in Loughborough, which is a town right sort of in the centre of England, very close to Nottingham, which you've probably heard of. And I live with my wife Rhiannon and my son Huckleberry, who is 5. Sounds like he should come from across the pond, not from here, but there you go. And I work for an organisation called Resound Worship, and we write worship songs that we publish. We have a small writing group. But we also do a lot of work with songwriters, initially in local churches in the UK, but actually increasingly across the world through online things. And obviously, it's how I first met you, Elise.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically how I spend my time. I do a bit of Bible studies, teaching in a higher education institute as well.
And you were, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you the brainchild behind the idea of doxicology, your most recent album, or at least one of the primary
Well,
champions?
I like to think I'm the brainchild behind most things. I was part of the team. I mean, I think doxicology is our recent-ish album, which was last year, wasn't it? Yeah, which was worship songs on ecological themes. We looked around, particularly in the contemporary Christian music type of sphere, which is where we kind of sit, and just people were not singing about these things. If you sing hymns, there's some good stuff out there, or if you sing quite alternative, there's some good stuff out there, but in the very mainstream. And we thought, well, could we try and write an album of songs that would sit in the mainstream a bit, cover some of those themes? So yeah, I think I'm always determined that our ministry and our songwriting and so on shouldn't just be another bunch of worship songs, because I think there are a lot, and that there has to be some reason for us doing what we're doing. So we look for gaps, we look for things that are not there in order to create.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, for our church, over Ordinary Time introduced the song "Let All Creation Sing" from the Doxicology album, and involved our children's choir, virtual children's choir, with it.
Oh, lovely.
So it was super fun, super fun. Well, and as you mentioned, with Resound Worship, you have what's called the 12 Song Challenge, and that is how you and I first got connected. Was a lifeline for me during COVID, as creatively, what do we do when we can't go anywhere, and how are we connecting with people? And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's out of the 12 Song Challenge that this song, your setting of the Kyrie, came forth. So would you mind just talking about your process, what drew you to the Kyrie, maybe what your history with the Kyrie is, really anything you want to share about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I've spent most of my adult life in Anglican churches, either working in the more worshipping, but often not in the most liturgical of Anglican churches. And so something like the Kyrie is something that I would always have known, but in reality probably quite rarely used as a prayer. It would have come up in spoken liturgy and so on, but this particular song came out. One of the challenges was just to write a song for Lent. Mm-hmm. And obviously we're in Lent now, so I don't need to go into detail about the themes and so on and what it's about. But it also happened that Lent last year coincided with the real onset of the pandemic and the beginning of what we call lockdown. I don't know if you call it the same thing, you sort of quarantining and other type things. And this kind of sense of bewilderment and slight despair and powerlessness, I think, were things that we all felt, just incredibly powerless against this thing that was happening. And I remember at the time, I just found it hard to pray. I'm not one of the world's great prayers anyway, but sometimes when you just don't know what to say with something like the pandemic, well, what do you pray? Because to pray, Lord, bring it to an end, feels, I mean, of course it's what you want, but it feels somehow, well, I don't know. I didn't know what was the right thing to pray. And so I remember also we set these monthly challenges and it was just to write a song for Lent, and I'd set the challenge for everybody else, and so of course I have to have a go at it, and that's really where the 12 song challenge came from. Actually, was Sam, my colleague, and I just wanting to get our own songwriting going. And I remember I sat at my piano, I sat at my keyboard, and I just played this sort of circular harmony, which so if you listen to the song, it begins, I can't remember what key it's in, but it begins on in Nashville numbers, chord 2 minor, which is sort of the most unstable, or 2 minor 7, which is these 4 notes, which is almost the most unstable chord you can play within sort of the palette of normal chords. It's just demanding to go somewhere, and I think it fitted this sense of I need to play something that I need to begin in a place that's completely unfinished. And so it sounds, I don't often think this hard about chords, but that was the one. And then just began this kind of circular chord pattern from 2 to 5 to 1 to 6, 2 to 5 to 1, 2 to 5, and it just goes round and round and round. And then I think what happened for me was that the words, I thought, what can I sing? I didn't know what to sing because I wanted it to be a prayer and I didn't know what to pray. And I think that's often what happens with these classic prayers, is that you just fall back on them, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
It makes sense of why you said them so many times, because you find you've got these words to fall back on. And also it echoed really what had been praying, and I have been, I think, for, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 years actually. In some ways I feel like I've got worse at praying, and maybe I've got better at it as well, because I've run out of things to say, and I so frequently just pray, Lord have mercy, here's the situation, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy is very often all I can think of. And I think it probably is a perfectly adequate prayer to pray. And that's what it was really. So in the face of what was going on, that sense of confusion and powerlessness, just began to sing Lord have mercy. And so the cyclical nature of the harmony, and then there's a little sort of sequence in the melody that just slightly descends to a different place each time. Yeah. Can it take you round?
It's really interesting as you're describing that, and especially when it comes to lyrics. And I love how you started with the music first. So in my own songwriting, I tend to start with the lyrics and then I search for a melody to go with it. But when we're praying and we don't have any words, I think so often we think about, okay, how do we want to pray to the Lord for what we want him to accomplish? And not like in a genie way, not like that, but just like feeling like you have to see the end in sight to know how to pray through something as terrible as the pandemic was. And instead, during this, this idea of Lord have mercy, it's in the invitation for Christ to be present in that moment and not rushing toward the end, not looking toward the back, like, well, how did you deal with this before, Lord? Like, what are we going to learn from it? And just this idea of meeting us here in this space, which is also very freeing, I think, for me to think that I don't have to take myself anywhere, that I can just be where I am and the Lord, and I'm asking him to meet me here. I think from the 12 song challenge, when we did the mental health month, that song, meet us here, meet me. Oh my gosh. I remember being in my kitchen and just stopping and hearing that song. And I actually felt the same way about yours. I think I was listening to the recap and you played your song and I just stopped and went, there's a reason this is resonating. And I think one of the reasons why I said, hey, Chris, listen to this Kyrie, because we do the Kyrie every year. Our church follows the liturgy. You know, when you have your Anglo-Catholics, the Anglo evangelicals, I like to call us the Anglo moderates, but moderate is relative as well. So, but this idea that we sing this every year, and a lot of times, like we've chanted it because historically the Kyrie was a chant. We've had these elaborate, a lot of them are in minor keys. And what struck me is, you know, you have your 2 minor 7 chord, but there's something very warm and settling about your setting. And I thought, you know, in everything that's happened this past year and still waiting for us to come out, I just want to hear the comfortable words over and over again. And your setting of the Kyrie felt like the comfortable words, like a Kyrie that required no work other than just settling in, and to just kind of collapse at the throne and collapse at the cross and say, Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on us.
Yeah.
So I know you
Yeah.
may have a different perspective, but that's
No,
what
that's really helpful. I think I mean I can never write songs in minor keys. I just don't know how to do it. They always come out of major keys, and that does reflect my character to some extent. But I absolutely agree, because for me those words, well, two things happen. So singing those words, and you're right. There's a kind of peacefulness to that movement and that melody, isn't there? It's kind of it's a settling place, because actually what I find is, if I am grabbing, I'm trying to grab hold of something and make sense of things and whatever else, just to pray, Lord, have mercy, is to completely fall on his mercy, is to say, this is all on you, Lord, everything. And actually, that's such an incredibly centering and secure place to be. It's so much better a place for me to be when I say, I have no control, Lord. It's all on your mercy. It's the only thing I've got to pray for. And so I think that certainly for me, that's where I find myself. And the other thing is this sort of sense of security of, I'm just joining the prayers of the saints from the last hundreds of years, and there's something in there as well which just says, I'm just joining in. I'm not even trying to create. I'm just joining in. We've been praying this for so long, and I think as well there's a sense of just release and peace in that. But I remember the same experience actually as you had, because I forget the songs I've written so quickly sometimes. When we did this 12-song challenge, and I've written 12 during the year, and I listened back through them, and I was pleased with all these songs I'd forgotten, and that was one of them. I just thought, what was it? And I put it on, and I thought, oh yeah, this is. Why did I forget this one? And I was so glad that I listened to it again. And I love having short refrains that you can use in worship and in prayer. And I sort of wish we had more in the more contemporary worship genre. And the problem is, it doesn't fit songs on the radio. It just doesn't fit the pop song model. But there's no reason why stylistically it can't still be in there. And this idea is a simple thing that we sing. It's just like Taizé, basically. It's really what I've written as a Taizé song, because it's just some simple repeated words, a kind of circular harmony, and then some gaps. And the gaps are there just to say, you can do whatever you like in those gaps. You could pray out loud, you could pray in silence, you could groan, you could play your instrument. And then what I hope is that then the Kyries bring us back together, and we sing those together. Now, at the moment, certainly in this country, we can't do it together, but hopefully we will.
Well, and your setting also lends itself to not just be, how do I say this? One of my hearts as a music minister is that the songs of the church are not just meant to be sung on Sunday, right? They accompany us through our week, and they're songs, just like you said, these prayers that we grow up with or that we hear, then we fall back on them when they're relevant, and not relevant's a bad word, but when the time calls upon them, we have those embedded. And I think with your setting of the Kyrie, I can hear it, I can hum it when I'm at work. I can sing it to my son when we're going to bed. I can hum it down the street. It's a very simple, and I love the word you use, grounding, a simple and grounding way to remember those words, and not better or worse from the elaborate ways that people have sung it in the past, and the chanting that we've done in the past, but just it's another way to make those words, to basically attach those words to our souls as we're praying day in, day out, practicing the presence of the Lord. And I really appreciate that. Again, not above or below, but for such a time as this. I've heard from some people in our ministry in the church that everything seems difficult right now. I mean, even signing up for something that you really want to do feels incredibly difficult. And so to have these songs that we can rest in and carry with, that maybe even embody Christ's word that my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Mm.
I mean, Lent feels so like, it feels like it can be such a not that the season's a burden, but it's a heavy season,
Yeah, it is.
a heavy season of penitence. And to be able to bring that heaviness to Christ with these words, with the melody, and be able to just fall into the arms of God, whose character is always to have mercy,
Mm.
then it's just such a gift. I find it to be a gift. But well, I suppose the last question I'll ask, and we've probably talked about it a little bit already, but um, is there anything that you would hope as people sing these words and hear these notes that you would hope they would find encouragement in as we do this through the year? Anything else that you'd want to say?
Mm. I suppose I kind of have said it, but I would hope that when people sing "Lord have mercy," we you can feel very guilty about something and say "have mercy," um, and of course that's right. But I just think dwelling on God's mercy should be such a freeing, such an edifying, building thing. It should sort of make sense of who you are by dwelling on His mercy, and I think that's one of the things I hope would happen as people sing these words, or just as they pray, "Lord have mercy." Anytime, it doesn't have to be with this song or any other setting of it. Is that to say, "Lord have mercy"? It's powerful. It's right. It's how it should be, and He'll go on having mercy. It's not like his mercy will disappear when the new creation comes and everything. It'll still be part of His character, even in a wonderful world. He'll go on having mercy because it will be what we experience all around us in our lives. And I suppose there's a taste there, isn't there, of what is to come. I think, yeah, that would be my main thing. I absolutely agree. Lent is a heavy time. It's been a heavy 12 months. It's been such a heavy 12 months. Like, we don't need more weight on us. And I love that you quoted Jesus there. Yeah, his burden is light. He says, "Cast your cares onto me." And I think that's what it is to sing "Lord have mercy."
Well, Joel, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for your faithfulness in the work that God's giving you to do. We'll probably put up some of the links for people to see more of the testimony of the saints today, of what's happening. And we'll just continue to pray for your church and your country as we continue to navigate this pandemic time, and that all the people that are closely linked in your life will come to know God's mercy as well. So
Thank you.
thanks, Joel.